to another Ultimate Fighter episode review. I know I said I'd probably push this back until Monday, but then I thought, music of the week can wait until then. So, Season 29, Episode 11 of the Ultimate Fighter, titled Snake Bitten, and we're going to get into why it's called that really quickly, so let's just go. So the episode starts with yet another prank, much like Volkanovski did at the start of Episode 10. At the start of Episode 11, Brian Ortega invites a friend over who he bought some exotic pets from in the past, and they fill Volkanovski's training/dressing room with gigantic snakes. Massive ones, real ones too. But basically, yeah, it was just a hilarious prank. They just let the big guns laying there. No one was hurt, thankfully, in the process of the prank, but it was funny to see Team Ortega waiting inside their room, putting their ear to the wall and just listening for the scared as shit reactions from Team Volkanovski. And yeah, I mean, it reminded that Brady Heistand, who was on Team Volkanovski for in this episode, he was the first person to open the door and he saw the snakes and he damn near jumped out of his own skin. And even Volkanovski, when he walked in, he thought they were fake because of how big they were, but then he saw them moving and he was a little bit scared. But it was a very fun prank, and Team Volkanovski, more specifically Volkanovski himself, actually got to have the biggest of the snakes on his own shoulders. So yeah, it was actually it was just a really funny bit of pranking, and no one got hurt, and no one was really mad about it either. So really glad that this is how we started this episode off. We do then move on to quite an interesting sort of segment where Brady Heistand is talking with some other Volkanovski guys, specifically Brian Battle and Mitroposo, about his thoughts on Vincent Murdock and everything, and Brian Battle actually didn't know about Murdock's brain surgery thing. So when they told him, he was pretty surprised about it, to say the least. And that does sort of lead nicely into a guest that Alexander invites over, a couple of those in this episode, if you include the snakes, in Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who comes over and basically just gives Team Volkanovski a pep talk, which they didn't really need because they've won 6 fights in a row. But he does tell them basically, because of him being a veteran fighter, he's had the most fights in the UFC, the most wins in the UFC, presumably the most bonuses in the UFC as well by this point. He just tells them basically, enjoy the ride, try not to fear it too much, just have as much fun as you can, because it's Cowboy Cerrone saying it, it has to be true, because the dude's a real one. So it was really cool of him to just drop by and give that advice, and even roll around with Brady as well and teach him a bit about jiu-jitsu, because people often forget that Cerrone is a really good jiu-jitsu guy, and he shows us some really good ground control techniques, which was quite cool. I would actually like to talk about both fighters' sort of training patterns and their thought patterns going to the fight before I go to my favourite part, which is the coach's challenge. But yeah, Brady Heistand, his main method is to sort of put the pressure on, because Vincent Murdock is not a pressure guy. Murdock is going to stick to what he did in his previous fight, wait for the opponent to come in, not get overly aggressive, set things up with the jab, try and go for some striking, wrestle if he has to, but mostly try and stick to stand-up. Whereas Brady, he's got to push the action, he's got to push his takedowns a lot, he's got to set things up with the kicks, and yeah, that was what they taught him. And he, obviously the jiu-jitsu stuff was Cerrone, but that was a really good sort of thing, and I like it when they do that for the training things, because they actually do specify it a lot better than I just did. But who cares about that? We gotta talk about the coach's challenge, so that's what I'm gonna do. And you know what? Considering how wacky coach's challenges could get in the past, dropping watermelons from helicopters onto gigantic targets, it's nice to have something a bit simpler in cornhole. But there is something interesting that happens at the end, but I'll get to that when we reach that point. So obviously cornhole, a much more American game, and Brian Ortega sort of grew up around that, going to college and things like that. Volkanovski, being from Australia, New Zealand, that part of the world, he, not so common over there, so he does not know jack shit about it. He admits to being really bad about it, really bad at it, but he will be competitive, obviously, because he is the featherweight champion, lest we forget. But there is an interesting set of rules in play, because basically you have to sort of outscore the other person, and the first to 21 wins. And basically, if you have the same amount of beanbags on the corn board, I'm just going to call it that, even though it sounds kind of dirty. If you get the same amount of points, that it cancels each other out and you're both at 0, but if you get one more than the other person does, then you get 1 point, say, and it sort of carries on from that. And if you get it in the actual cornhole, you get 3 points. So yeah, there was a lot of funny moments. It does take a while to get to it being more exciting, though, because it is mostly tied up at first, but then Ortega starts taking the lead with 6. And there's a great moment when Ortega, like, gets one near the hole, and then sort of gets one halfway in, and then he throws another one to try and hit it, and it only goes, like, another centimetre in, and it doesn't fall into the hole. And he's losing his shit over that, and I was like, oh, come on, that's so unfair. And then when they went over to, like, switch holes, I should have phrased that better. When they went over to the other board, excuse me, there we go, he actually jumped and stomped on the board and caused the thing to fall through. Obviously, it didn't count for points, but it was a funny moment. However, yeah, Team Ortega won 21-11. And, you know, the coach gets 10,000 Gs, and all of his fighters get an extra 1,500, and his staff too. But then Ortega does something actually very endearing and charming. He asks Dana for another 10 Gs, and Dana's like, are you sure? Brian's like, yeah. And Dana says, okay. And then Brian gives that extra money to Team Volkanovski. And I was like, I've never seen that happen before. But that was really nice. I really like that. That was just actually a genuinely cool thing of him to do. And even Volkanovski was actually touched by it. He was like, yeah, he's a real one. And I was like, fuck yeah, he is. So that was really cool. And next up, we had the fighters talking to their families before the actual fight itself. Vincent was talking to his wife and their still unborn son. And it was nice to see him talking to her, and like he goes over some of the problems they were having before he came to the tournament, because like they were in the middle of moving at the time. So that was really cool to sort of like see him talking to his wife again, just looking happy. Same thing goes for Brady. You know, he was talking to his brother and his mom, and you know, like he points out the fact that his mom had to do 3 jobs at one day while still going to school to look after him and his family, and it was just really cool to see how much admiration he has for his mama. I can respect that. So yeah, just really sweet stuff from both sides. Nothing much to say besides that, but I do like these segments, and I hope we see them one last time for the next episode, which is probably going to be the last fight. But we still got one more thing to talk about for this one, and it's the fight itself. And I accidentally spoiled the result of the fight itself for me, because I was actually trying to find the title of this episode, which I found shortly before actually starting recording this video. And I know who wins, but I'm not going to spoil it for you just yet. We're going to get to that. So, there's also the fact that Vincent Murdock's left knee was slightly torn in training, but he felt he was still well enough to compete, so he still fought with it. He didn't really tell anybody except for the, you know, backstage interview people. So, yeah, I'm not sure how smart that, of an idea that was, especially considering that Miles Hunsinger told people, and because the rest of it, the tear was he pulled out the tournament completely and got replaced by someone who didn't win anyway. But still, Vincent Murdock went in with a really bad left knee, and he was a bit stiffer looking than he was in his first fight. He wasn't moving around as much. He was doing a bit of bouncing about, but yeah, Brady really took control early, landed some really good head kicks, followed some really good body shots, and immediately searched for what Brady's really good at, which is wrestling. Gets a really good lock off the hips and takes Vincent down, and very much controls him. And even though he does take Vincent down, Vincent is still fighting back. He's throwing some really good up kicks, trying to throw some really good shots from off his back, but Brady eventually manages to sort of like close that distance, so to speak. And as soon as he gets into like a full guard, half guard sort of position, you see Vincent's left leg like completely lock up. Like it is not moving. He tries to get it to move, but it's not. It's just not going for him. And Brady pretty much takes control from that point. It starts landing ground and pound, gets into a crucifix, starts landing some strikes there. Even when Vince tries to move away, he rolls sort of onto his front, but Brady gets the body hooks locked in with his like legs around Vincent's waist, and immediately, you know, with the back sidey sort of mount thing, opens up with a bunch of punches and wins by TKO in round 1. No complaints about the fight itself. It was fun while it lasted. It was nice to see another finish for you know, for like the second time in a row, because after Brian Battle's finish of Andre Petrosky. And it's sort of like an ironic sort of thing as well, because you have to remember Petrosky won by submission in his fight, then lost by submission in his semi-final fight. Vincent Murdock won by TKO in his quarter-final fight, then lost by TKO in his semi-final fight. So that, yeah, that's really, really sort of weird how that played out. And also, Team Ortega only has one chance to get a fighter onto the finale, and that's Tresean Gore. And obviously for the semi-finals, he will be fighting Gilberto Biner of Team Volkanovski, and the winner of that will go on to the finals to face off against Brian Battle. So, yes, I was just looking at the Wikipedia page to make sure I got that right. So, yeah, all in all, pretty solid episode. I'm really looking forward to the next and last one. I thought the Coaches Challenge was really good. It was nice to see that sort of return with the rest of the season. Really feel bad for Vincent because, like, of his story going in. He has probably the most interesting story of any of the fighters going into the house, and to see him lose was kind of sad. Although, I do want to bring up one funny moment to go out on. So, basically, when it came to the last shot of the Cornhole Coaches Challenge, excuse me, Volkanovski only had one shot to sort of like tie it up, and that was to get the bag into the hole. Again, cornhole is just weird to talk about, and there's like a great moment where it's sort of like a parody of a sports movie. There's like a slow-mo of him throwing it. There's a great shot of all the like fighters and coaching staff sat between them, and like doing that thing in like sports movie where you see a ball go by and they'll just go, "Oh, it was a great slow-mo shot. That was epic music." And he completely missed the shot by a fairly decent margin, and it landed on the right of the board. Didn't land on the board at all. So that was a funny moment. I'd rather think about that than the sad fact that Vincent lost, and I really wanted him to win because I really wanted it to be like, you know, a Volkanovski guy, a Volkanovski guy representing the middleweights and bantamweights, like one each for that, and the same for Ortega as well. That's not what we're getting. Hopefully we'll get Trish on Gore in the finale as well, but I wouldn't be mad at all Volkanovski guys making it. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But that'll about do it for this episode review. All in all, I had a lot of fun watching it. I thought this fight was really, really good. I'm looking forward to the next and last episode. And next thing you'll see before might be a Fight of the Night review tomorrow if there's one to do. If not, I will push Music of the Week forward by a day. So yeah, that'll about do it for that. And also thank you to... No one really watches my random gaming streams, but it was fun to do. I always like doing them, I don't know why. So yeah, most likely see you tomorrow. And as always, I forgot to mention thank you for watching all the backtracking A Day to Remember parts. It was really, really cool to do those. Now we can sign off. So as always, thank you for watching, you're awesome. Bye bye.